just like standing on the stage and looking out and seeing fucking whatever it was, 1,200 people just staring back at me like, all right, come on, play. It was just like, I remember looking at everyone like standing on stage around my amp. I'm like, the fuck am I doing?
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. A band that's been undeniable in this kind of, the 2020s and on is definitely tied to this guest that we're having on today. A band that's been just absolutely crushing it. And, I've gotten the pleasure of seeing Pain of Truth a couple of times, and Nick and I got to chatting a little bit about just like podcast things and wanting to talk with him about that band as well as the other projects that he's involved in. Just someone who's just been crushing the riffs and, someone that I'm very excited to have here on the show. So without further ado, Nick of Pain of Truth and Missing Link. Thanks for joining me, my buddy.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, Nick, we were talking just before we get going that you've listened to a few of these already, so you kind of know the deal of checking some bevs before we get into the music chat. So, what are you bringing for the show today?
I got a Skittles flavored C4.
Oh, okay.
This is my go-to. I have one almost every day of my life.
Wow, that is some commitment. Why the Skittles specifically? Or I don't know if they have like a line of like Starburst and Jolly Ranchers or shit like that.
I wasn't crazy about like the Starburst flavors, and like the original flavors that they had were still pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And when this one came out, it was just above all else. It was so much better.
Mm-hmm. Now, since we brought up Skittles, are you a sour or regular Skittles dude?
Sour.
Sour?
Sure.
Yeah. Hard agree there.
Yeah, I have a crazy sweet tooth and I love candy.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably also why it's my favorite, just because it tastes exactly like every Skittle melted together.
Right. So you're not like, oh, I only, go for the green ones or anything like that. All Skittles are equal.
Yeah, you grab a fistful and you just throw them all in.
Yeah. I remember getting the sour patches, especially for like Halloween. I would always like those were the top of the shelf as far as what I'm going to first. Yeah. But yeah, I like C4. I see like time to time up here in Canada, but like never seen the Skittles one. So that's a great bev debut for the episode. First one ever for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah. I'm drinking kind of the opposite as far as like not drinking anything energy drink wise. I'm just having a Liquid Death, keeping it real simple. Trying to drink more liquids these days, anyways, and luckily have a bit of a stock here. Just
I also have a huge Yeti just full of water.
Yes. Are you like trying to keep up with your water intake, or are you like, I fill it up and what I get to throughout the day, it is what it is?
I always drink a lot of water. I don't drink really soda or anything. I enjoy energy drinks, but I'd probably drink close to a gallon of water a day just regularly.
Cool.
Definitely. My girl actually gave me this recently, and with that, it's definitely a lot easier to drink more water.
Versus like going through multiples.
Yeah, just like a bunch of like little bottles. Mm-hmm. So now you have like 3 bottles in one shot.
Yeah.
It's definitely a lot easier to get your water intake for the day.
Yeah. Well, whether you want to cheers me with the water bottle or the Skittles, cheers to you, buddy. Really excited to do this.
Cheers.
Yeah, you got to do the bump. We haven't had it yet where someone has cheersed and then it's like spill,
Yeah,
just
just
disaster.
straight
So, um, before we move on, Nick, uh, most overrated energy drink. You seem to know your way around those.
overrated.
Yeah. What gets too
That's.
much hype?
I feel like I see a lot of people. I'll probably get hate for this, but I see a lot of people drinking Celsius lately,
Okay.
which I'm not crazy about. I feel like it kind of just tastes like a shitty seltzer.
Okay, that's fair. I've had a few of those,
Yeah,
and I haven't like fallen in love with them,
yeah.
but maybe I just haven't had the right flavor. I know,
Like they're not bad.
yeah, they're not bad, but not great.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's almost like more demeaning to be like middle of the road, you know, versus being all bad or all good. So sorry if you like Celsius, because there's not a lot of love for it here. Um,
Step up.
step up your game. Drink a C4. So Nick, since you're a new guest here on the Scope Exposure podcast, any new guest that comes here on the show, I always like to get a bit of their origin story as far as how they even just discovered heavy music. So whether that was metal, punk, hardcore, talk to me about like the first times you were just even had a inkling of any of this.
Okay, so growing up, I have two older brothers that are both. One is 10 years older than me. The other is 11 years older than me.
Oh,
So
okay.
there's quite the age gap between us. And growing up, my one brother, Yanni is his name, he babysat me like when I was younger,
Mm,
because both my parents worked and then our older brother worked as well. And he played guitar in a bunch of hardcore bands growing up as well. He was into it. And I guess just from him watching me and spending so much time together, it just kind of, it was always there. And,
sure.
seeing him doing it kind of made me want to do it too.
Mm,
So he started getting me into bands, just like kind of basic, like the main like hardcore bands like Hatebreed, Madball, Agnostic Front, stuff like that. And then also my mom was kind of into, I wouldn't say hardcore, but more of alternative music. Like she listened to like Led Zeppelin and like Rob Zombie, Korn, stuff like that.
mm.
I think my mom is to blame for why I love the band Creed so much.
Okay.
But I feel like a lot of people enjoy that band like as a joke, but I thoroughly enjoy that band.
Hmm.
But
Was that just on repeat all times at the house? Just all the
yeah, it
Creed
was
all the
just
time?
something that she listened to if it was on the radio, turn it up and fucking it was awesome.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, my brother played in a couple hardcore bands, when I was super young, and he played guitar as well. And he actually gave me my first guitar. It was just one of his old ones I didn't use that much anymore.
Hmm.
And kind of just, figure it out.
Yeah.
He never had any lessons or anything, and neither did I. He obviously showed me basics of, this is where you put your hand, this is how you pick, this and that, and kind of started to figure it out from there.
Hmm.
Uh,
So there was definitely like it's like, oh, this is just within the family already. Like, lots of people come on the show and even just their parents being like kind of similar, like maybe listening to Metallica or like dad rock, so to speak. But, your brother giving you guitar lessons at such an early age on your babysitting times, like that's that's for sure gonna seal the deal. Was your brother playing in any hardcore bands that listeners or anyone would know about, or is that too far in the past?
um,
Or
I'm
just
not too.
maybe not too far, but just maybe didn't blow up as much.
Yeah, none of them were really huge. Never really went outside of like the tri-state New York area.
Mhm.
Obviously, if there's anyone that's from Long Island listening, there was I think the first band was called Brace Yourself.
Okay.
And then he was a band for a long time called Get It Right, which got decently big on Long Island. Um, he played in a band called Walkers for a little while, which was more of like a post-hardcore band. And then he actually sang in a band called Stand as Iron in around like 2009 or 2010 area. And we actually brought that band back a couple of years ago under a new name as Heathen. And
Oh,
my
okay.
brother was playing guitar and I was doing vocals.
Oh, wow. So
So
that must have been very surreal.
yeah, it was pretty cool.
Mhm.
And then he actually played bass for a little while and guitar in my old band Forced Out. So he played in that with me for a little while, and then now he plays in a pop punk band called Stifler.
Oh, okay. So yeah,
But
he's just as active as he ever was, it sounds like.
yeah, he's always stayed in it, always fucking, whether it was doing his own band or playing with my bands or whatever it was, he always kind of stayed around with it.
Yeah. So, this may be jumping a little too much like further in time because there's definitely stuff from some of these early days that I want to dig deeper on, but has your brother been able to see a Pain of Truth show and just kind of see where the current state of the hardcore scene is now? And just have you guys been able to have a back and forth as far as, the differences, the just how things have evolved since when he was really active in the hardcore scene?
Yeah, he's been to quite a few Pan and Truth shows, and he actually got to fill in for a Pan and Truth show. He played bass for us.
Oh, okay.
It was when we played in Connecticut. I think it was last winter.
Okay.
But yeah, Zach had a knee surgery, so he couldn't play for a couple shows, and he got to play bass, and it was cool. It was kind of a cool full circle moment, and like him finally, like obviously we've played in bands like together,
Hmm.
but none of them have had the reach or reactions that Pain of Truth gets.
Yeah, it's not just like here's our, circle of friends from the New York area. It's like, oh, people at this, even just a Connecticut show, might have traveled from like long and far just to see this band, and we get to
Yeah,
do that together. That's really special.
yeah, it was definitely super cool and like definitely a meaningful show for the both of us.
Hmm. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting how even just like a huge age gap between you guys, it was like, you were just really intrigued by it, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll show you the way," essentially. Um,
Yeah.
so even with that, like, when did like kind of the first couple bands that you were playing in where it wasn't like, oh, I'm just kind of either doing something with my brother. When was it like this is my own thing?
Uh Honestly, pretty close after he got me into it. Like I started playing guitar when I was probably, I don't know, I want to say like 8 or 9 years old, something around there.
Hmm.
And then I think when I was, obviously I would go like to see his band play, my mom would bring me, and then after they would play, my mom would bring me home. And but I think around when I was like probably 12, I live in a town where there's like a main train station.
Mm.
And so just one stop over is Amityville, where Amityville Music Hall is, which is one of the main venues on Long Island. And it's gone through a couple names, but it's been here forever, since my brother started going to shows. So we would just get on the train after school, go to the next town over, and then just go to whatever local show was going on at the venue.
Mm.
And we started doing that, 2, 3 times a week. And that went on for a while. I started meeting people, started to get to know, who's who and what bands are which, what bands are the bigger bands and, whatever else. And then when I was 13, I got asked to join a band, which was it was more of like a deathcore band. It's called Contagion.
Okay.
Uh, I'm actually still best friends with the kid that played guitar in it with me.
Cool.
So it was cool that joining that first band built, a friendship that I've had now for over 15 years or close to 15 years.
Yeah.
And so that was the first band that I played guitar in, and then I started to get the taste for playing shows and um, stuff like that.
Was the like joining Contagion like something that was a little bit less, cuz it sounds like you got introduced to like real deal hardcore like fresh out the gate. So was it a little like I just want to play in a band and I don't care what genre it is, or were you a little on the fence about joining a not like straight up hardcore band?
Oh no, I was fine with it being like a not hardcore band. I was always into my musical taste is very just all over the place.
Mhm.
I listen to almost everything, and so being in like a deathcore band or whatever it was didn't really kind of shy me away from it. I wasn't like, oh, it's not a hardcore band. It's like it was just music, and I was playing it with people that I was friends with, so it was still fun.
Mhm.
And I also had friends at the time that were still in like, death metal bands and, just like heavier than just straight up hardcore.
Mhm.
So that didn't really matter to me at the time. It still really doesn't, like I would still play in a death metal band. It would still be fun. I was definitely a lot better at guitar playing in that band than I am now.
Sure.
So,
Yeah,
but
I'm curious just because I don't know just the differences now where if at least for me, it didn't feel like there was many options, so it was like the only band that I had access to at the time was like a pop punk band, and I was the one always pushing for the breakdowns, try to give it a little bit more of an edge. But I feel like now there's just a surplus of options for um, kids that are just getting into this to play in a punk band, a hardcore band, a death metal project, a power violence thing. And I hope that that surplus of options doesn't stifle someone from just doing it and just getting involved and starting that snowball. But yeah, that was the reason that I was asking that. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that per se. If people have too many options and if that's good or bad.
no, I think having the options is good because, I mean, especially now, the way that, not just hardcore is, but, like you got bands like you'll have Vomit Forth, Pain of Truth, and then Koyo on the same show,
Hmm.
which happened at LDB, and we were all pretty close together in the lineup. And it's three totally different bands, three totally different fan bases, but all three bands come from the same scene, and all three bands are there for the same reason, just playing music.
Hmm.
So I think if you have the options, it's good because that way, if you have a taste for another style of music, or if you just want to try it, just to see what it's like,
Hmm.
you can do it and you have that option to do it, which is awesome.
Yeah, I do think that's a good point that even if you go with maybe the more like Vomit Forth band, using that example, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to play the hardcore shows, right? Like you might
Yeah.
not be on every single bill, but I think that's the same for any subgenre of this whole thing. But yeah, I really I think that is true now. I think if you were playing in the Vomit Forth type band 5, 10 years ago, like you that might only put you on the path of playing like death metal
Yeah.
shows. But I think
Yeah.
it's a
It's
lot
definitely,
different now.
yeah. I mean, I can't really speak for everywhere, but I know like definitely on Long Island, there was always like not like straight up death metal bands, but like just like heavy bands that like could fit into that world, but they can also still fit into hardcore.
Yeah.
So it was like I feel like we've always kind of had like those sort of like mixed like heavy into like metal bills.
Hmm.
So I mean it's just something that I don't really see as weird, but obviously anybody else might see, like a death metal or deathcore band on a hardcore show and be like, the fuck's this band doing here?
Hmm.
To me, it makes sense. I think it's cool.
Yeah, I think we are in an era now where it's pretty much like with arms wide open, it's just like it's kind of anything goes at this point, and I think the reason that it's working is that all the bands have a hardcore vision, which is we just want to play cool shows with our friends. We want people to mosh hard. We want people to stage dive, and that applies to a vast amount of the subgenres that you see on any fest these days.
Yeah.
I'm gonna fast forward a little bit and get into some Pain of Truth stuff. So obviously, like ever the origin of that band is very unique as far as kind of being like kind of not a pandemic project, but something that popped up in the midst of all that. And I definitely think like Michael, like his perspective on all those things coming together. But tell me about like when that popped up on your radar. Were you like at the point where it was ground like not ground zero, but like day one idea of that, or did that just hit your radar when it's like, hey, we have this band, we have this demo, and we need a guitar player? Talk to me about like where you fell into the mix of all that.
So me and Mike have known each other for a very long time, and we've always played in separate bands, and we're always playing the same shows, and have always said to each other, "We got to do a band together."
Mm,
And obviously, it never happened until this. But he had the songs. So the No Blame Just Facts EP, the four of those songs Mike had written, you know, before Pain of Truth even started.
mm,
And he had been hitting me up for a little bit, like, hey, I have these songs, like, let's just jam. Like, obviously there was nothing going on because of COVID. So he would hit me up like, hey, I have these songs, let's jam, whatever. I'm like, all right, yeah, let's do it. But I was really busy with work at the time. So it was kind of hard to just make the time, like on a weeknight or whatever to schedule it.
yeah.
And then
Because I think you're a construction worker, so a lot of that
yeah,
wasn't stopping when people were being told to stay home in
yeah,
kind of
I
those times.
worked the entire time through.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like a lot of people had like ample time to write new music and do shit like that, and you're like same old, same old.
Yeah,
So
I had nothing.
right,
But yeah, he had started, it was kind of determined already that I was gonna play guitar and whatever it was.
sure.
And so obviously he knew the songs already, so he went to just record demos of them, and he recorded them, and then I came in kind of like halfway through the recording process, and it was just Mike and the drummer at the time.
Mhm,
That was like the only, lineup, so to say. And so I came in and then I helped finish recording the EP with him, doing backup vocals and everything like that.
mhm,
And then we started to put together a lineup. Mike kind of handpicked everyone more or less of the band that he wanted to do it with.
mhm.
And we just started jamming and practicing. And then once we released it, it's funny because we really didn't expect to do anything with this band. It
Right.
was kind of just, hey, we have these songs, let's jam. Just
Maybe we'll play once a year, or
maybe we'll play a couple shows, write something, whatever. And then we put it out and it kind of just grabbed traction right away. And then we did our first shows. They were crazy. We did 2 nights in a row at the Amityville Music Hall. And
how
it was
long after? Because the demo came out in like the summer of 2020, but I think y'all didn't play your first show until almost
uh,
a year, right?
no, so we put
Or
the
yeah,
we put the demo out in the summer. Was it of 2020? Is
I
that when it came out?
I think so. I'm gonna just double check that here. Because I felt
Yeah,
like that came out in the midst of all that, but maybe it came out later, and maybe I'm just speaking a little out of turn. Yeah,
yeah,
2020,
because we
July.
damn. So it was almost a year because we
Hmm.
did our first shows in October of 2021.
Yeah, so over a year.
Yeah. That's actually it. My perception of time has been so screwed up the
Oh,
past couple
yeah.
of years just because of like everything that we've been doing. It kind of like it feels like it's being so long, but it's really not.
Right. But there is this, like, we had someone, call in for another one of our podcast series where their album came out, like, April of 2020, which, like, March, April, and maybe even the beginning of May was almost like a bit of a dead zone,
Yeah.
as far as, like, releases go, unfortunately, just because people are in this, like, life-changing, altering time, and everyone's in that. But I think by May, June, July, that's when people were like, "Oh, this shit's not going away for a little bit, so I almost need to shift um my practice as far as how I'm discovering new music versus just going to shows." And,
Yeah.
thinking about like your guys' EP like dropping right in the middle of that time where people had probably mentally committed, like, was the recipe that probably just shot it, you know, out to the ethos. I almost feel like Drain's California Curse was like a tipping point as far as like, oh, people are gonna just like be at home and just like be listening to that stuff because that came out a
Yeah.
couple
Just
months
put my
before that.
music. Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to when I guess like Mike was first hitting you up about, playing guitar and you that he has these songs, like you said, you didn't have any inclining or like, just correct the record. Like when you heard the songs where you're like, "Oh, there's something here maybe." Or was it like, "This is dope. We might play some shows."
It was pretty much just he had sent me, like he had sent me a couple videos of him like just playing them,
Mhm,
and I heard him on recording, and I was like, "All right, this is pretty cool." And
mhm.
then obviously we finished everything, and I just kind of viewed it as any other band we've done. It's kind of just all right, we're just writing music. It
Mhm.
sounds cool.
Yeah.
If someone else hears what we hear, then they're gonna like it too.
Mhm. So, obviously you put it out, people lose their minds, a year goes by, and then it's like first show time, and you did 2 back-to-back first shows.
Yeah,
Um
so we booked the first show, and for whatever reason, it sold out within like an hour of us putting tickets up.
Right.
I don't know if it was just because it was one of like the first couple shows coming back, or because I think people started doing shows again like towards the end of that summer, beginning of fall.
Yeah.
And so it was might have just been, perfect timing. And it was just the first show sold out, and we were just like, fuck it, let's do a second show.
Mhm.
Because there was like a lot of our friends didn't get tickets, or this and that, and we just wanted to like still like have like our friends at the show that weren't able to get into the first one.
Yeah, and witness, like, the beginning of, maybe something that at least at the time, you're like, "Well, there's a lot of buzz," but, like, you're not it's almost weird if a band is, like, booking their own show and they're booking a 500 to 1,000 person room because like, I think the venue from what I was remembering from the videos, like, is like a maybe a 3, 4 cap
Yeah,
kinda
I think
space.
they cap it out around 300.
Yeah. So theoretically, because both shows sold out.
Yeah,
Yeah. So in theory, you could do like an 800, 900, but it would be weird to be like, because that's a lot of pressure on the band. Because you're like, are 800 people going to show up for this? But clearly they did over 2 days. So
yeah. So it was insane. I mean, we played both nights, and all of us were just like, "The fuck just happened? Like, like why is that happening?"
right.
But it was awesome, and we had a lot of fun with it. And pretty much right after those first two shows, Pain of Truth did a week tour with it was with Standstill and Age of Apocalypse.
Oh, okay. So
Uh,
bunch of New York bands all
Yeah,
just hitting the road together. Yeah.
yeah. I wasn't there for it. I wasn't able to get out of work in time. So Tone, who plays bass in Hangman, he filled in for me.
Cool.
Um, But and then after that, we played. I think after that, the next show we played was FYA,
Mm.
and
So
then that was the tipping point of us realizing, like, okay, I think we're getting to something here.
yeah, because that was gonna be one of my next questions. Is like, what was the moment where it's like, is this something that we could actually do full time and not have it be this like labor of love? It's like it's almost because it's a common thing with a lot of people who put out music and they have these crazy expectations, and then when that doesn't come back to them, they feel like defeated. Then bands break up. But like we've seen a lot of projects, especially in the last couple of years, that go out with no expectations, and then the world demands
Yeah,
more of that. So FYA 2022
two.
at this point, what you feel like that was like the okay, this might be like a full-time thing.
Yeah, well, not even that. I think it was just we played that set and just like standing on the stage and looking out and seeing fucking whatever it was, 1,200 people just staring back at me like, all right, come on, play. It was just I remember looking at everyone like standing on stage around my amp. I'm like, the fuck am I doing? But yeah, after that set, it was just chaos from start to finish.
Mhm.
And I think it was that set that we were kind of like, all right, I think we might do more than we expected, you
Mm.
know?
Yeah. And
Be-
it's funny too, like as the guitar player, like, there's many of Pain of Truth songs that just start out just guitar. So when you're waiting, you're like, I need to kick this thing off.
Yeah,
Like, even like the 4 count in, because the 4 count could just go to nothing, but like I have to hit that first riff that people are gonna that switch is gonna happen where the wild animals start to come out.
yeah,
So as far as like before we get into like I guess like current day Pain of Truth stuff, like y'all have like really gone worldwide with a lot of this stuff. And I'm just kind of curious if there's any specific shows, runs, tours, or anything that you had a similar moment that you did for FYA where you're like, is this actually happening? Like, are there any that were just very special to you or very full circle in the midst of everything you guys have been up to?
yeah. I mean, there's been a ton of shows where it's just like mind blowing that it's actually happening. Like we did right after FYA, the end of January, we played in Tacoma, Washington,
Mm-hmm.
just another gig. And that too, it was like we're playing, you know, across the entire country, somewhere where we know nobody. And it's like all these people are here to see us. And the same thing, our set was insane.
Hmm.
And it like it still doesn't make sense to me. I'm like, why did these people enjoy something that we did so much? You know, it's weird, but it's awesome. And and then we did the full US with Drain and Ingrown
Mm-hmm.
in March. And the show, it was the second show of the tour at 1720 in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And that show was another one where we were like, all right, something's going on here. You know, there's a video from that show. I think it's on our Instagram still. During we're playing the song Pain of Truth, and you hear the whole room scream it. And like between the lights and fucking everything going on, every time I watch that video, I get chills.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just insane to see.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been really crazy seeing the response, and especially a lot of people like kind of utilizing you guys as almost like their first hardcore band, especially for a lot of the people that are um, finding out about this in the midst of all the craziness of the last couple of years. But um, and just correct me if I'm wrong. The band was originally going to be named Pain of the Truth, but then it got shortened to the 3 words. Is that right, or is that wrong?
Yeah, I think when Mike was kind of going through names for the band, he had like a phrase like the pain of the truth.
Yeah.
and I guess just thought it sounded too weird or it was too long or whatever, and shortened it to Pain of Truth, which thank God he did because Pain of the Truth kind of
Yeah, there
sucks.
wouldn't be enough people at 1720 yelling that at the top of their lungs.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I forgot what that's called. Or where that's called, but it's like those short words like the of or like those kind of things. So,
Yeah.
got to keep it on the one there.
Yeah.
So, as far as like the time we're recording this, it's no secret that Pain of Truth has um recorded an LP, and it's funny in a lot of the other interviews that either Mike has done or just people talking about your band in general, like always talking about just like the the smaller quantity of songs and how you guys have been able to really squeeze that lemon. And but now the LP is coming with a batch of new things. W- was there a pressure to get into the studio initially, or was it like we are gonna just like juice these songs as much as we can because it it is like definitely a great showcase of what you guys are about and do. uh I'm just curious if there was a hesitancy to like get into the studio, um kind of in both ways, where it's like, oh, are we gonna like, are we waiting too long to give people more things, or should we just kind of like really try to juice this stuff as much as we can?
I think that us playing those songs as long as we did wasn't intentional
Okay.
because we did start writing new songs before, honestly, No Blame Just Facts came out.
Oh, okay.
Like, there's a song on the new record that was written the same summer that it came out.
Wow. Okay, so things have been simmering and really fine tuning for not just 1, 2, but 3 years at this point.
Not necessarily, because that's the only one that was written that
Okay,
long
so
ago.
that one alone, that's the outlier.
Uh, but we obviously, over the past, for a year straight, we were pretty much just either touring or doing weekends nonstop, and we were all always together. So it was kind of just like, hey, check out this riff or whatever.
Mm,
So it was always, there, but we never got around to it, I guess. And then um obviously the demand of a Pain of Truth LP started to rise, and we were like, all right, so we got to do it. And so we booked a studio time. We went in February for a week. We went to Bricktop Studios in Chicago, worked with Andy Nelson.
mhm.
It was awesome. Honestly, probably the best time I've ever had recording. And he's super easy to work with. So we all had a great time doing it.
Mhm.
And realistically, that whole LP was probably written between December and February.
Of or of this past year.
Yeah,
Okay.
within 2 months.
Okay. So then I guess the one song that's been, in this like solo crockpot or anything, is maybe just the one exception. But yeah, like were there any unique either circumstances or places that you found yourself writing? Because when you're doing as much as you are, you almost like, where do I have time to like write new music versus just being at home and being able to like craft a song? I think I remember when Isaac from Knock Loose was last on the podcast, he was mentioning certain inclination riffs he would write just like doing sound check at like a bigger show that they were playing, and they had more time. He's like, oh, that's kind of cool, and then obviously take it home and work it out. But I'm curious if there's any times for that for yourself, or are you like, I need to be in my chair, I need to have my monitors, I need to have all that for it to really come together.
Um, there was definitely, I mean, like one of the songs we wrote when we were in Europe last year, we wrote like Um, we were just like jamming on the bus pretty much, and just we're like, all right, that sounds cool. And then like when we would sound check for the next show, we would jam it quick and like try and piece things together.
Okay.
So there's like one song that got written like that. There's, you know, me and Ridge both have like home recording setups. So it was kind of easy for us to just like sit down and like record a riff, send it off, and be like, all right, try something with this.
Mm.
Um, there was definitely times like I would be working like crazy hours and I would just be sitting there like thinking like, all right, you know, this could sound cool, this could sound cool. And I have like either just voice memos of me like mouthing a riff,
Yeah.
or like I'll be like tapping on my steering wheel for drums, and like it'll be a video. Like I have one video of like I'm going like this with my phone, like shaking it, and that's the way cymbals.
Oh, okay.
And then like there was like silly shit like that.
Mm.
Um I remember like anytime we would fly, like I would just be sitting in the airport trying to write stuff,
Mm.
or it was really just all the time, like just constantly, like just trying to think of stuff in my head, and then hopefully I remember it to get home and put it on a guitar.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially like I've done it so many times, and I still do it to this day, where I have that idea, I have that spark, and then I'm like, oh, like I'll get to that in an hour or whatever. But like sometimes I do need to like pull out the voice memos, or take a video, just to kind of document it so I can have it going back.
Yeah.
I know when Matt from Citizen was on the podcast, he's like hyper obsessed about that, because he'll get out of bed in the middle of the night if he's got an idea and trying to spend some time at least getting it going, versus waking up the next day and then potentially missing
Oh
out
yeah.
on writing
I had a
the
moment
banger.
like that uh when we played the festival in Bogota this past December.
Mm-hmm.
We're leaving the show, walking to a McDonald's, and we're sitting in the McDonald's, and I'm just like thinking of riffs in my head. I'm like, fuck, this sounds awesome. And I literally just everyone got out and everyone was gonna go somewhere. I was like, I'll see you guys later. I ran to the hotel. I just got straight up to my room, took my guitar out, started playing it and videotaping it.
Right.
And I had like a
I got to
note
take
in,
this McDouble to go and then just
yeah,
fucking cook
I
it
had
up
a
the rest.
note in my phone with just a bunch of numbers, and it was like the frets that I wanted.
Right.
So I had like a funny moment like that where I was like, it was like, I don't know, it was probably close to midnight or 1 a.m. or something. I was like, I need to get back right now
Yeah.
just so I can figure this out.
And that song made it on the record in the end.
Yeah.
We love that.
Yep.
When duty calls, right? Like, it's it is cool to see how, you guys having all these opportunities, you're still cooking in the midst of, like I love hearing, writing something on the bus, and then okay, we have sound check and all the amps are turned up to the volume that we wanted to. Let's at least feel it out in like a room versus like a condensed practice space.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's really cool to hear some of the things around that. One of the other questions I had was, we mentioned that the demo was all Michael. When did things, I guess, as far as riff wise, start to lean on you and Ridge, or is there kind of like just a super collaborative environment that you guys do for this?
So the No Blame Just Facts EP was all Mike, and then the song LINYHC, Ridge wrote that.
Okay.
And then the split, I believe, was also all Michael, because it
Okay.
was just songs that he had written, and we're like, all right, we're just gonna use these. And then but as soon as I started jamming with Mike, like before we put out the demo and everything, we started writing. So I kind of had a part in it, from back then. And then obviously once we started to wanting to start writing for the LP, it was like, all right, everybody's, the LP has songs that, that I wrote the whole thing, or Ridge wrote the whole thing, or Mike wrote the whole thing.
Mm,
And then there's also songs that are mixes of the three of us.
cool. Yeah, that's cool to see because sometimes, you know, like I don't think there's necessarily the right or wrong way to go about it, but like, getting to talk to so many people from different, hardcore backgrounds. Some people play a really passive role in their band and they're like, so and so's the main songwriter. I just show up and I play it. And I think if anything, I would actually prefer that because I have so much going on versus having the pressure of like, oh man, I have to write another LP. It's 2 years goes by and that thought, starts to recur. But it is cool to hear that, it didn't just stay on one path. The
Yeah.
the gates got opened and now you're getting to take influence. Um, I'm sure you've been able, like, are there certain like guitar quirks as far as Michael and Rich is concerned that you're like, oh, that's your thing that you do versus like maybe that doesn't come natural to me.
Yeah. Mike loves doing shit where he'll slide back and forth between like 1 and 8, so he's just going like this.
Okay.
He likes doing shit where he like bounces like power chords between the first and the second string. So like going up and down,
Oh, okay.
which at the beginning it was just something, like that's like his style.
Mm,
So it was like something that I wasn't really used to playing.
yeah.
And it was like at first it was weird and then I got used to it and then ultimately incorporated it into the way I write things now too.
Right. Sure.
Oh, there's definitely that. Um I don't know. I feel like the three of us have pretty similar uh like ways that we write and how everything sounds. There's definitely, I guess, if you know us like personally, you can definitely tell like, all right, Nick wrote this riff or Ridge wrote that riff, because it just sounds like bands that we've been in the past, I guess.
Got you. Got you. Yeah. So you're kind of you're hearing the subtleties of someone's hardcore resume
Y-
in the riffs. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna use this as a bit of a segue before we start talking about some missing link stuff. But um, you have the pain of the unofficial. I don't know if it's maybe official. The unofficial official Pain of Truth guitar, the one that has all like the markings and all of that.
Yeah, I
Um,
do.
yeah, it is funny too because I think before you guys played at Hold Your Ground last year, Gage from Momentum was playing that guitar because they were just having a whole weekend of
Yeah.
of woes, so to speak. Anyone who's curious about that can go listen to any of the older Momentum podcasts. But Gage broke his guitar, so I guess he was using that, and he was sitting for that set, so I got to kind of like really analyze it while I was filming them, and then you guys got on stage and played right after. So I guess I was just curious on the idea of like crafting that. Was that like super early in the band's existence, or was it like, well, we're gonna
I
be here for a bit. I want to have a signature, so to speak.
I did that in between the Drain tour and the Terror tour. So I think I did it in like April sometime,
Got you.
that first year of our shows.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I think I just did it because I was bored. Because I do, like wood carving as like a hobby, I guess.
Mhm.
And I was just like looking at the guitar. I'm like, I feel like I could definitely just like carve shit into this and it would look awesome.
Mm.
So I printed out, stencils of our designs and, started just carving away at it. And it worked pretty good. But the more that I still played the guitar, the more it kind of just weathered away because, like between like sweat or just punching my guitar or hitting it into things and stuff like that, like it started to chip away.
Yeah,
So I think,
we got some show and tell that we can do.
yeah, why not?
We're slowly getting the official.
Yeah.
Dude, Why does Jackson not, make a run of those? It's my real
They
question.
should, honestly, they should. But, like, you can see, like, down here or, like, in the of and the in
Oh, yeah, I can
started
see.
to wear out.
Mhm.
Like, this is all Sharpie in here to fill in the black.
Right.
So it was because there's, like, a polyurethane coating in between the paint and the wood, so I had to, like, try and stay in between it so that it wouldn't chip off.
Yeah. I was curious, like, when did you know when it was like, "Oh, I'm chipping too deep," or was it like, "Oh, now I'm," you know?
No, it was kinda when I was doing the devil head that we use as our logo,
Mm.
I went too far through and it just, like, broke off a chunk.
Oh,
Uh,
shit.
I was like, "There's my limit." I was like, "I
Yes.
can't go past that."
Yeah, so so it sounds like that is maybe it's still a guitar that you play, but it's over time now just becoming an art piece, so to speak, that maybe you can just
Yeah.
have on
Yeah,
the
I
wall.
haven't used it, I don't remember when the last time I used it was, honestly.
Mm.
Probably, like, last winter or something like that. 'Cause, I
Did
had
you
gotten
take
an
it to Columbia or you just take another one?
No, Colombia okay, so actually Colombia was the first time that I didn't use it.
Oh, okay.
I had just gotten guitar sent to me from Jackson, and I was using that one.
Got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was kind of a next question for me was like, you know, at least when I was getting into hardcore, there was like different phases as far as what the most popular acts is that people were playing. So like going back, uh, man, what would this be? Like the early 2010s, like I don't know if you're familiar with a company called Fernandez. I was seeing a lot of bands play like the Monterey's and a bunch of those, and then LTD obviously was like another big one. There was different things that people wouldn't touch, like Schecter or things like that. But I'm just seeing this just huge surge in the last year or so with Jackson just hooking up so many people within our world. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't know, like, if them sending you guitars like an official hookup or just like kind of a more like, here's a freebie on us. Thanks for playing the Jacksons. I play Jackson as well. I'm curious if I don't know if you want to speak for them specifically, but are Jacksons kind of like going to be the guitar for the rest of this year and maybe into next year that majority of bands might be playing or should be playing? I don't know.
I've definitely seen a lot more people using Jacksons now,
Mm,
which I always liked them, but for whatever reason, I just kinda never used them. Like, I played, LTDs forever,
mhm.
and then when I joined Pain of Truth, originally, I was still using an LTD. I had I think it's the EX, like the Explorer type body.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I had one of those, and ended up selling it, and then I went and bought the Soloist that I carved everything into,
Mhm.
and that was my first Jackson, and I just loved how it played and everything, and then, the guitar that I had sent to me from them well, not really sent to me, I still had to pay for it, but I got, like, a discount on it. It was
Mm.
a Japanese, Dinky,
Right. Okay.
which was sick. I love the guitar. It fucking plays amazing. And then, now recently, I've actually and for Missing Link, I still use my LTD. It's a M series. I've had that guitar for probably almost 10 years now.
Wow. Okay. So
And
that's been in the arsenal for a longest time.
yeah, I've had that guitar forever and it's always, just played super good. It sounds heavy as fuck. So I always use that for like my heavier, because Missing Link is definitely more of like a breakdown oriented band,
Sure.
so to speak. And So I use that for that, and then actually now recently I have been using an LTD for Pain of Truth as well.
Hmm.
I have the EC 1000, the Les Paul body,
Hmm.
and it's not that I necessarily want to use it, but I enjoy using it because, well, I do want to use it because it's one of my favorite guitars.
Yeah.
But I enjoy using it because it was my older brother's guitar.
Oh, did you buy it
We,
from
we,
him, or is it
yeah,
just
we
this?
actually we traded guitars. I traded him another Jackson that I had.
Ah, I see.
It's cool because he's had that guitar, same thing, for 10, 15 years.
Hmm.
And when I was way younger, he used to let me borrow it, just to play at the house, or, if I was playing a show, I would use it.
Mm.
And the last time I had it before now, I snapped the headstock clean off of it.
Clean off? How'd you do that?
It was just sitting on a stand, like one of like the shitty, just like the U stands
Hmm. Yeah.
that kind of like float in.
Right.
And it was just sitting in my room. I was young. I was probably like 14 or 15 or something like that. And my mom had come into my room and she was carrying something, and I went to like go grab it and it knocked into the guitar, and it was like slow motion. I just watched it just tip down, and that thing hit the ground and the headstock broke right off.
All the strings just.
Yeah, all the strings are all over the place. And I was just like, fuck, he's gonna be so mad. And I got it back to him. Obviously he was pissed, but it is what it is.
So,
And
yeah, so I guess did he get to, is it the original headstock, or did you have to get a new one and
it's still the original one. He had it fixed. They, I guess, relayered the wood and glued it all together. You
mhm.
can still see the break in the front, and then it broke like there's like a plate on the headstock, and it broke alongside the plate, and then it went through the neck.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so it
That's
really
not an
broke in.
easy job to fix that.
Yeah, it broke in like two different spots, and he had it fixed, and plays still just as good.
Hmm,
So it's pretty cool that I'm using that guitar 'cause it's like a good, like, full circle moment for me.
yeah. On a very, similar timeline, compared to ours, that break is that much worse and it's, unplayable, but, that's very cool that you're able to, like, play a guitar that inarguably was the thing that maybe intrigued you to just playing in bands in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned Missing Link. You guys put out a new record at the very end of last year, No Saving Grace.
Yep.
Um, Talk to me about like that band in the midst of all this Pain of Truth stuff that we have going on, because it's it's wild for people to have. There's a lot of musicians that had projects, kind of pre-COVID, and then that either amplified different things, and then, it's the balancing act of like, where do I give priority to and all that. So maybe like before we do that, like what was the origin point of that band even before Pain of Truth even came into the picture?
So Missing Link was before Pain of Truth,
Hmm.
and it's, another good friend of mine, Victor. He's played in a couple bands from Long Island as well. Kinda hit me up, same thing, like, "Hey, let's start a band."
Hmm.
Like, it was I don't remember if it was right before COVID started or right after, but it was, like, within that timeline of, like, where shit was kinda just weird, and he hit me up, he was like, "Let's start a band." Like, "I'm fucking bored." I'm like, "Alright, start a band." And, you know, we st he put together a lineup, we started jamming, and he had a couple songs from his old band that never got used, so we had, like, something to start with
Yeah.
just to, like, play together. So we had, like, I think it was, like, 2 songs that we were just jamming for a while, and then, we started to write stuff, and, same thing, we kinda just it kinda just started snowballing and rolling, and we put out the first, demo that we had, and then, obviously, Pain of Truth started, at the shortly after we started Missing Link. So balancing the two has kind of been hard. But we have Chris, who plays guitar in Internal Bleeding and Without Remorse. He fills in, like when I can't make it for Missing Link.
Got you.
And it's kind of the same way that Pain of Truth started. It was kind of just like, hey, we have these songs, let's jam them, see where it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is funny how you said like it's kind of the same, like you got hit up, let's start a band, I'm bored. Same thing with Pain of Truth. But both there is an element of like luck that goes into all those things, and it's like the
Yeah.
timing and things that are outside of your control, where one band might shoot to the moon and some another one is still going to go out and do cool things, but maybe not like at the same level. um
Hmm.
but it at least has been cool to see, like, because I know Missing Link played Snow and Flurry Fest where Scoped was filming all those bands.
Yep.
And when I was going through the footage, I was like really just impressed by the heaviness of what you guys are bringing to the table. And like you said, it's a little bit more breakdown centric than what Pain of Truth is, so you're able to scratch that itch. When you were doing the new album that came out at the end of last year, something, again, I don't know if that's a Pain of Truth similarity, but there was a lot of guest vocal spots on the record. Talk to me about like choosing or the ideas that came up, or was it like, oh, we're just saying yes to too many people and now we can't say like, hey, I think we have not overstayed our welcome, but overindulged in that? Or was it like we want to have as many people from our circle of friends on this?
Are you talking for Pain of Truth or for Missing Link?
For Missing Link, for the latest record.
For Missing Link, I feel like we definitely wrote the songs like envisioning having a guest spot on them.
Oh, okay.
So it was, and same thing with Pain of Truth. A lot of the songs that we wrote, especially like for the new LP, it's like we kind of wrote them, and it's like, oh, it kind of sounds like something that this guy's vocal style would fit over. It would be like, well, it sounds like this band a little bit.
Hmm.
So it like that's kind of how like we decipher like if we want to have like a guest vocal spot on or not. And it's also just like just like having a guest vocal spot from one of your friends that's also in another band, or even if they're not in another band, it kind of just puts them on and
Hmm.
like puts their name out there too. So like the same time you're pushing your band, you're also pushing your friend's band. So it's kind of like you're bringing each other up.
Yeah. It is a bit of a flex to be like, oh, so and so came and killed on the vocals. You're like, what band is this person from? They're like, they're not in a band
Yeah.
right now. I know Matt from Citizen was also on one of the tracks, and like I didn't expect when I was listening to it today that there was going to be any singing on a record like that. But was that something that I guess you guys had in mind, or did Matt approach you? Like, talk to me about how that
That
kind of
was
connection came to be.
that was honestly came in after the fact after we wrote that song.
Hmm.
I guess our singer Mike, he's good friends with Matt, and I guess he just heard singing over the guitar part for the vocals
Yeah,
and just hit him up and was like, "Hey, like do something over this or whatever it was." And I honestly didn't really expect it. I didn't know if he was going to be singing or if he was
yelling or
really
like a
like
little bit of both. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, which I think it's awesome that he sang over it because like I'm a huge fan of Citizen
Hmm.
too, and I think Matt's got a sick voice. So it ended up sounding sick, and obviously we put my vocals underneath it, so it kind of still had that like heavy aspect to it,
Yeah.
but it was still singing.
Hmm.
But I think that was definitely like a step out of the circle for us, like trying to get outside of the comfort zone a little bit.
Hmm.
And I'm happy we did it because that's honestly one of my favorite songs that we've done so far.
Totally. Yeah. I really like how you were saying earlier about like writing a part with a guest vocal spot in mind. And there's definitely been some times where it's like, oh, there's a change up here that it would be cool to have someone, come in with a different kind of voice or vocal style. But, it could also work that we could just do our thing all the way through. But I like hearing from you how you're writing a certain riff that you're just immediately thinking of that person, or at least maybe the tree of bands that are connected to that style of riff.
Yeah, not necessarily being like, all right, I'm gonna write this song just to have this guy on it,
Yeah,
but it's like
totally. Yeah.
having like, obviously every single band uses other bands as their influence
Hmm.
into what they write, how they sound, this and that. So it's definitely like taking certain bands as an influence to write a certain song or even just like a certain riff and being like, all right, well, this kind of ended up sounding like this band, so maybe this dude will do the guest vocal spot on it.
Mm,
And
yeah.
it's cool because like when we recorded, Mike did all the vocals, like all the guest spots that would have been guest spots or before we figured out where we wanted them. And the song sounds sick, just as that.
Yeah.
And it's like you add the guest spot into it and it's like, all right, this sounds like it could have been this band's song.
Hmm.
It's cool that it has like that. Just adding that to the song gives it that twist,
Hmm. Do you
and it's
think?
also
Oh, sorry.
just no, it's all right. It's also just kind of a gimmick since the start that we just have guest vocals on every song.
Yeah, you kind of have to. It would be weird for the LP to show up and there's no guest vocal spots on it. So.
Like there was almost one song that didn't have them because it was just trouble scheduling to get the person into a studio or they just kept bailing on the times that we had and then they ended up bailing altogether later on.
Mm.
So it was like, fuck, we have one song with no guest vocals.
So wait. So every song on the LP has a guest vocal spot.
Yes.
Is that a scoped exposure first exclusive?
I feel like it's kind of expected, but yes, it is.
Okay, okay. I mean, like I was expecting at least the same amount as the demo, but there is a lot of joy going through my body knowing that. Like that
Yeah,
is
it was
very sick.
as every other release that we've done, every single song has at least one guest vocal spot.
Yeah, but this is all. Is it 10 songs? I don't know if you're at liberty to say that.
I don't know if we've said it or not. I guess I'm allowed to because no one's told me I can't. It's 10 songs and then an instrumental track.
Okay, so I would be shocked if there was no vocals and then there's a guest vocal spot on the instrumental track. But
You'll have to listen to find out.
okay, wow, we're just getting spoiled here. Maybe the last thing on that I can ask you, Nick. Well, I guess you've already implied that I feel like there will be ones that are like, oh, okay, that makes sense because it's a Long Island band, it's a New York band, it's a band that is very close within the Pain of Truth universe. Just to say yes or no, are there any guest vocal spots that are like a little outside of that realm that might be leave people questioning if they saw the track listing today?
Um,
Or is everything like, yeah, that makes sense?
I wouldn't say out of the realm because all of them except one are all in hardcore bands, or actually except two. But it's still bands that make sense because of the relationship to us.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a couple that we pulled out of the woodworks that, don't normally do this type of thing.
Okay. Well, that's very exciting to hear. I I can't wait to listen back to this once the record is out and be able to kind of like piece some of those things together. Um, to kind of hit on the last couple of things here, Nick, not really like music related, but I know that you ride bikes.
I do.
You got some bikes. You just have the one, or do you got a couple on hand?
I have two. They're both Harleys. I have a 2015 Dyna, and then I have a 1980 Shovelhead.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
one that's a little bit more of an old soul compared to the other.
Yeah, yeah, the Shovelhead I bought as a stock bike and then just pulled out the motor transmission and just rebuilt it completely into like an old school like chopper style bike.
Okay.
And then my Dyna is like a just like a performance like I wouldn't say race bike, but like it's built for that.
Mm, okay. Do you
I
do
don't race
any? You don't do any racing?
it.
No. More just for the cruising and appreciation
Yeah,
of that.
yeah, just I enjoy, same thing with cars. I enjoy just working on them and building them and, just doing shit to them. It's something to do with my friends when we hang out, and it's just more for just personal, like, hobbyism.
Yeah. Um, has the amount of times that you've been able to use these Harleys gone down with the amount that you've been traveling or doing different things, or you're always making time to do
Yeah,
that?
I mean, definitely not as much, because obviously we're away from home a lot,
Yeah.
but, when I am home, I do still try to make time for it.
hmm it's unfortunate that that is just a type of transportation that is not friendly to people that need to lug gear around and
Yeah.
have to do those kinds of things. Um, I don't know if you've ever thought about or considered if there was a maybe a one-off Pain of Truth show where you're like, well, could I like just drive and like kind of make a trip out of it? I don't know if you're more like I don't want to do a trip as much as like kind of just riding within my town.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've done some decently long rides, but there was one point on the Terror Tour when we played in Massachusetts. We actually Paul Dove was playing drums for us on that tour, and we stopped at his house on the way to the show, got on two bikes, and then rode to the show, and met everybody else there, and then rode back afterwards. So
Oh, okay. So even in the midst of playing music, you're able to like, if other people have bikes, you're like, okay,
yeah,
you guys
still
go sound check and load in. I gotta go rip for a bit.
yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a? Because I know like there's all these all these things that are not like sub cat interests within the hardcore world. Like you'll have people that have like coffee discords and there's like a bunch of people from hardcore that are doing that. Have you been able to meet and like connect with people who are also into riding bikes, or have you not at least found those people within the stuff that you're doing? Do you kind of feel like you're on an
Uh,
island?
Yeah, there's definitely, like you meet people, like you can meet someone at a like a swap meet or something and then be like all sick shirt and you start talking about music or
Mm,
like if I ride my bike to a show or something, someone come up talking about the bike and they're like, oh, I have one too, or
mm,
stuff like that. So it's definitely you definitely meet like new people, because of both of them kind of intermingling a little bit.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, for sure. I've definitely made a couple new relationships just because of that.
Whose bike are you most envious of? Have you met someone who's had a yeah? Have you met someone that you're like, if you died tomorrow, I would be showing up at your house to ride this away. Not that you wish that, but you're just like you appreciate it that much.
Uh Honestly, Paul, who uh I just said before he played for Pain and Truth for the one tour, he also plays drums in Missing Link.
Oh, okay.
He's got like a bunch of sick bikes,
Hmm.
like a bunch of old, like FXRs and stuff. That definitely, if he were to drop tonight, I'd be at his house tomorrow trying to get one.
I mean, at least you're in a band with him, so his ghost won't be haunting you while you're out on the road per se. But
Yeah. No, I probably still would be.
yeah, yeah, maybe for other reasons.
Yeah.
Is Missing Link a Harley band, or is it just the two of you that ride?
Uh, I wouldn't say we're a Harley band, but there's I think all 4 of us either have or have had bikes at
Okay,
one point.
yeah.
So,
So there might be some bike alumni, if anything, but not
yeah,
maybe current. Okay, got you,
yeah.
got you. Um, has either Pain of Truth or Missing Link talked about doing some kind of bike rip, or if have you guys already done that? Like whether it's a
Uh,
Harley Davidson thing or something in between.
I don't think we have. I mean, it would be cool. Like I've definitely seen bands just like rip the Harley badge logo, and it looks pretty sick.
Yeah,
I feel like it would make sense if one of the bands did it.
yeah. Well, I'm sure Mike might be listening to this podcast just out of pure curiosity, so maybe that will get his brain going.
Yeah.
Um, as far as yeah, so Missing Link, new Pain of Truth stuff. What else is going on in your world that's to talk about for you, Mike?
Not much. I mean,
That
you know,
covers a lot of bases, honestly.
yeah. I mean, outside of the band stuff, I really just, I work. I'm an operating engineer, so I run heavy equipment in construction.
Hmm.
So when I'm not touring or doing shows and stuff, I'm just, I normally get home and I go back to work.
Yeah.
Um, but besides that, not really much. I just fucking hang out with my dog and play video games.
Yeah. What are you
Don't
playing right now?
Call of Duty all the time.
All the time. Have you been a Call of Duty head your whole life, or
Yeah, that and Grand Theft Auto were always like my go-to games.
got you? Got you.
Yeah.
I was on the other side of the shooters, and I had an Xbox, so I just played Halo. But
Okay.
our
Halo.
trajectory was not the same as what Call of Duty was. If
Yeah.
anything, I almost blame Call of Duty for ruining Halo, but that's a whole nother can of worms.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember growing up, the family across the street, I would stay at their place a lot, like after school until my parents got home.
Mhm.
And they had the original Xbox,
Yep.
the first one with like the huge fucking controllers and they had Halo on it. And I remember playing that all the time when I was like super young.
Yeah. 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 I won't get into the can of worms as far as when, like Halo's being made by another developer, and essentially a lot of those people were just like not Halo fans, and they were just trying to make it more Call of Duty
Yeah.
over time. But this is a music podcast, not a
Yeah.
Spencer's woes and grievances about Halo. Nick, I really appreciate all the time that you've given us for the pod. Before we kind of get into the close, I always like to ask kind of an ongoing closing question. Off the top of your head, off the top of the dome, tell me a Mosh-related story that is either wholesome, gruesome, funny, happened to you, Pain of Truth, Missing Link, or just at a show you were at. Anything Mosh-related that's off the top of your head is how we start to head towards the close.
Uh that's hard. There's a lot of them. I'd say there was well, it actually happened again this past week in Atlanta too, but
Again? So there's two parts to this?
technically there
Okay.
was they kind of intertwine a little bit, but
Sure.
during Pain of Truth sets, there's like parts throughout the songs that I'll throw a spin kick while I'm playing guitar.
Yes,
And,
I'm well aware of this move of yours.
and we were playing in Connecticut, and it was a small stage, and I didn't realize that Mike was so close to me, or I had thought he walked away from me and then was and ended up turning back, and I ended up kicking him straight in the chest, and it knocked the wind out of him. He like stumbled away, and I just lost my balance because I wasn't expecting him to be there.
Right.
I lost my balance and fucking fell right on my ass.
Oh God.
And I had to finish out the song just sitting down on the ground.
Yeah.
But we just played in Atlanta for the House of Disorder Fest,
Yeah.
and it was awesome. Shout out Yoon for putting us on that. But same thing, I threw a kick during one of our sets, one of the songs, and my foot was on my cables, and I didn't really realize it. So as I was spinning, my foot kind of slipped, and
Oh
same
no.
thing, I fell right on my ass, and fucking this time it hurt, and I was
Oh,
just like,
okay.
I like laid down for a second and sat up, and Mike saw me from across the stage, and he like crawled over to me and sat down and started playing my guitar for me. And then like two people started just jumping on top of us.
You
So
know,
it's like it sucked, but like we made it fun at the same time.
right. It's almost like the first drop, maybe broke that first, baby layer of like skin. It wasn't as intense. And then the second time it's like
Oh yeah.
your body's like, Nick, we've been through this before, man. Like
Yeah, the second time it was like, you didn't learn your lesson the first time, dude.
exactly. But I will say very few guitar players can execute said spin kick, especially while playing. It's not,
Yeah.
and it's not done like, oh, here's a ring out part where I'm doing that. You're doing it like mid riff. So
Yeah.
I respect it as a fellow axe, a fanatic myself.
Thank you.
One last thing. This is another quick little hold your ground thing. And I don't know if this is specific just to that fest or if this is an ongoing thing. But Pain of Truth played twice, and just correct me if I'm wrong. You got iced both times, or just the one?
No, I just got iced the one night.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the second night I shotgunned to C4.
Oh, I was like, there was another beverage in the mix of all of this, but
Yeah, which was an insane choice.
literally like 0 to 1,000. It was just going. Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah. Do people within the Pain of Truth camp ice one another for those that drink, or was that just a
No, that was
one-time
just
thing?
like a one-time thing.
I respect you for committing to it. Like, I think that might have been at the very beginning of. No, wait. Was that the end of the set? I can't remember. I just remember I took it and I put it at the very end of the Pain of Truth set as like a little Easter egg or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny too because I think that I'm pretty sure it was Mike who iced me.
Yes, it was him.
I'm pretty sure either Ridge threw me under the bus or he overheard us because I was gonna ice Mike.
Oh.
Getting upset. And like we had it up there, and I think he just grabbed mine and then just pulled it on me before I could get to him.
So Ridge ratted you out.
I don't think Ridge did that because I don't feel like that's him. I think he probably just overheard us talking, or maybe he just saw it and was like, "I'm gonna ice him."
Well, if Michael ever comes on the pod, I'm sure I will pry it out of him as far as.
Yeah.
Did you know that prior to, in advance, or was that just spontaneous?
No, it was spontaneous. But yeah, we got to get to the bottom of it. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. Well, Nick, all of your links, the band links, that will be in the description of the podcast as well as the show notes. Anything you want to shout out, anyone you want to plug, or anything you want to send the people off with before we go, the floor is yours.
Pain of Truth LP is coming out later this year, probably end of the summer or early fall. Missing Link is also putting out a 2-song flexi on a new record label. I believe it's going to be beginning of the summer.
Okay, cool.
That's really it as far as music. Pain of Truth will be back on the road in the winter. for the record release, and that's really about it.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I'm happy that, we're getting new Missing Link and Pain of Truth right around the same time. And
Yeah,
yeah, that's very exciting. Nick, it was a pleasure finally getting to set this up and chat with you about all your music shit. And I hope we get to cross paths again real, real soon.
definitely, man. Thank you for having me. Had a great time.